Reading the music is likely slowing you down from getting from new piece to finished work. So is it finally time to bin the score? It's so easy to let the score hold you back from getting to and actually playing the music, even to the point of holding your playing and learning back altogether. You get bogged down, and that leads to questions like, when should I look at the score? When should I look at my hands? And should I even read the music at all, or should I just have memorized everything? Today we're going to answer these, along with why reading can slow you down, the fix that we should be using, and how we can and should use the score as a tool. In the last video, I outlined a 5-step process for learning a new piece, from initial hand separate right the way through to how you never forget it. What we didn't dive into though was the dip in the learning that you can experience when you're doing something new. For context, this should be a piece that's pushing your level a bit. If it's simple to read, you may not have this problem. The dip happens when you're at the hands together but very slow stage, and you can't seem to gain momentum or speed in the piece that you're playing. You might find that there's quite a lot of hesitation and you're almost glued to the score. Sometimes you just get stuck in this dip for ages. So what's going on? Quite simply, you're overreading. You're still processing what's on the page and you're still working out what you're doing. So you process what's on the page and then you find the note on the piano and then you can finally play it. And that creates this hesitation. Often we try to overcome this just by repeating and repeating until we've memorized everything, and then the piece gradually speeds up. That's how many of us are taught, or at least that's how we assume that we're meant to learn. It will work, but it also takes a very long time just to get to the music. And if the music is simply too dense and we can't process it quickly enough, then we stay in this dip. We stay in this bogged down, slow stage. So what do? We could stop reading music entirely. A lot of the time when we look at what our hands actually need to do, it's relatively simple. If we step away from the score and we actually listen to the music line, it kind of makes sense. Or we could improve our reading so much so that we never have a problem. So absolutely, notation is the language and we should improve it as much as we can. And the next video is actually going to focus on that. So be sure to subscribe so that you get notified of that one coming up. But remember, we're talking about pieces that are currently pushing our level right now. This isn't sight reading. So the fix is to memorize as you go, but in the right way. Before we jump into the method on the piano and the solution, something that I'm always asked is, what should I spend my practice time on and for how long? I've put together my new and updated practice routine to help you structure your practice and make it easier to know exactly what to practice when you sit down at the piano. If you want to find it, it's in the link in the description below. Okay, so when I walked through the 5-step learning process, I did touch on the real fix. Let's go through it though. You have to start by memorizing as you go. If you want to learn faster, you need to remember what you read and what you learn. It sounds simple, but why don't we do it? Well, the funny thing is, when we're reading, we often don't retain what we're actually seeing. Think of it as a poem. If you stare at the page and you read it again and again, it takes ages to stick. But if you read it once, you look away, and then you speak it out in small chunks, you might find that it takes a little bit of time and you get it wrong at first, but you will memorize it much more quickly. Music works in exactly the same way. If you're always reading while you play, you're leaning on your reading skill rather than actually committing the music to memory. So every session becomes just reworking out what the notes are of the actual music instead of actually learning it. The approach I recommend is to memorize as you go, even from the hand separate stage. As soon as it's hands together and it's slow but reliable, that's the moment to get it off the page and into your head. So how? So try this method once you've gone through the music hands separately, you've listened to it, and you know what fingerings you're going to use. So here's the method. What we're going to be doing is active memorization rather than just passive repetitions until it goes in. So all we're going to do is we're going to take one bar, or sometimes one bar plus one beat, and we're going to look at it We're going to look at the melodic line, the chords underneath. If we can identify these, that'll be really helpful for memorizing as well. But we're going to look at it, and then we're going to look away, and then we're going to play it. And then we could do it again if we weren't sure. We can look at it, look away. And then, of course, take the next bar. So next bar, look at it, look away, and then play it. You can do that then for the whole page. This will help you to memorize it really quickly. Then when you come back, you could do the page once more. It'll be quicker. You could do 2 bars at a time. So let's try that. Let's do 2 bars, looking at 2 bars. Of course, if you're playing something that's really dense, you're going to have to do half bars. So you're going to have to make the section size a little bit smaller. But for this one, we should be able to do 2 bars here. And you can see I'm no longer relying on reading. I'm no longer relying on processing those notes, finding my fingers, and then playing. You can see why this might improve your visual memory as well. But let's just try 1 more bar. If it goes wrong or you're not sure about it, you can always repeat. And then, of course, you come back and you put that in as well. So start with 1 bars or half bars, and then 2 bars, and then you can do 4 bars. And if you can do 4 bars, you'll probably find that you know the whole page anyway. So here's a side story. When I was a student, I was once properly scolded for about half an hour for arriving with a piece of music, a new piece of music that wasn't memorized. It felt a bit mad because I simply hadn't done enough repetitions for the music to sink in yet. But that lesson did unlock something. I realized I didn't have to wait for endless repetitions. You can memorize actively and instantly in small chunks as you go. I didn't believe that this method would actually work, but in a single practice I did manage to memorize a whole page of dense music, and this was right after the lesson. So from then on, I moved from not thinking about memorizing until after to memorizing from the very start of learning a new piece. Do you need to practice this way all of the time? No, this is your active method for when you actually want to memorize quickly. But here's the brilliant bit though. If you practice the skill of memorizing, not constantly, but consistently, you'll find that you start to memorize without even thinking about it. It naturally kind of rises up your list of priorities when you start learning, even from the hand separate stage. It's actually the same skill that I used and talked about in the video on memorizing without even playing. Strangely, practicing using this method has improved my visual memory of the score, so what I can actually see. I can see the notation more clearly in my head now. I learned this around like 19 or 20, so this isn't just like a childhood thing. So memory is a skill. It's trainable like scales or sight reading or technique. It's just harder to see and harder to track, and often we're not told to improve our memory. If there's a particularly difficult passage, so there's more notes or it's harder to read or just technically awkward, read most of the piece as usual and then apply this active method specifically just to those dense parts. So for most of the piece, you're just going to read it as normal and then apply this method to the tricky bits. Okay, so how can we use the score without relying on it? We've changed our approach to reading and how we use the score. This is about using the score as a tool, not rely on it, so we can actually get to what matters, which is the music. Can you still use the score? Absolutely. Back to the poem idea, once you've memorized it, you look at the words differently. You don't need them, but they guide you. You see them as bullet points or cues without actually having to read every word. If you memorized and you're still using the score, note when you're going to look and when you're not going to look. I call these check-in points, and they work in 2 ways. If you're mostly playing from memory, but you want the score there, have specific check-in points so you always know exactly where you are. Otherwise, the score becomes a bit of a distraction and you can actually look up and be distracted, not know where you are, and actually get lost. I find that a quick check-in at the start of each new phrase or each new line super helpful when I'm looking away or playing from memory. If you're following the score and you're not sure when to look at your hands, use this rule. So feel your way around the piano with your hands whenever you're in the same position or area. And highlight then the jumps or the tricky chords where you know you're going to need to look at your hands. Then jump straight back to the score. Sometimes we're told we should never look at our hands and we should always keep our eyes on the score. But this isn't necessarily true. We also want to build visual memory, knowing what our hands look like on the keys. And we're going to watch how they're moving. Are they moving in the most efficient way possible? You can't do that if you're always looking at the score. That said, you do want to develop the ability to play by feel rather than always by looking. But remember, whenever there's a jump or a section that's more difficult where you know you're going to need to look at your hands, absolutely do. Just remember where you're going to be on the score when you finish that jump or section. So it's not one or the other. We're doing both of them, but we're just doing them at different times. So follow these simple rules for when to look at your hands and when to look at the score. And do allow some flexibility depending on what you're aiming to do. These skills bring you closer and closer to the music, and they help you to actually finish pieces. Early memorization, it frees up this kind of bandwidth for the most important things like shaping and expression. So to learn how to shape music and to find out the one skill that Chopin said every pianist should master, check out this next video.